Hi there, Rob here. Today I want to make a little bit of a different kind of video. This is, of course, it's related to the Helix. As you know, I'm a Helix fanboy, basically. But it's basically about num2 files. There's this new neural amp modeler file that captures your amplifiers beautifully, and then you can use that in well a number of hardware and software devices and plugins. The Helix doesn't support num2 yet. This is not that important, to be honest, because I'll explain this. We have four items that I can discuss: IRs versus cabs, and Helix amps versus num2 files. And to make it a bit easier, um, in the Helix, you can select a cab or an IR, an impulse response. The difference is this: a cab has been programmed by the Line 6 guys to simulate a specific kind of speaker cabinet, but it also has been programmed to simulate all the parameters, all the surroundings. So you can, for instance, as you know, pick one of a dozen microphones. You can put it at a distance from the speaker. You can put it at an angle, etc. You load an IR on the Helix, and you're limited to maybe 4 or 5 parameters: low cut, high cut, that kind of stuff. But you cannot, for instance, change the microphone, because an impulse response has been recorded by blowing a signal through the speaker cabinet. That is recorded by the microphones, well, that they selected, and they turn it into a very small file with the characteristics of the cabinet. So if you have a Sennheiser microphone that you place 2 inches from the cone at an angle of 45 degrees, and you make an IR of that, that is what you're stuck with. That's why you will have huge IR libraries that basically have all the same stuff, but different microphones that are positioned differently, so you can take your pick. If you choose a cab in a Helix, everything is simulated digitally, but that means that you can select a cab and then select one of 12 microphones and select the distance, the angle, etc. And it's all simulated digitally. So I use a lot of impulse responses in my Helix because I found a lot of very good ones at tone3000.com, which is a brilliant website, by the way, heads up. But I typically have 12 impulse responses for one speaker cabinet with different microphones, different angles, and you can select. If I could do that in the cab, if there be a cab version of that IR, I could basically select everything myself. And this mic, I only need one cab because all the parameters can be set. So now, how does this relate to num2 and amplifier models? The Helix has simulated amplifiers, which means that you choose your JC120. Then the brilliant guys at Line 6 have analyzed everything that happens when you turn these knobs and flick these switches on the original amplifier. And they have programmed all these effects, all these reactions into the amplifier block. So again, you can set, for instance, you can set the treble down, but the presence up. You name it, master channel, the channel volume, master volume, etc. If you instead would use, if you'd be able to use a NAM2 file, then the NAM2 file records exactly how the amplifier responds to signals in real time. So consider an amp as a block as a snapshot, and an AM2 file as more like a video. it follows it in time. Again, that's beautiful, but why is there a limitation to that? You can only edit a few parameters of the NAM2 file. In the plugins, the Logic plugins, etc., you can download for free. You can set bass, mid, treble, a couple of those things. But what you're basically doing is the same as putting an equalizer after an amplifier block in your Helix. It is not the amplifier itself. You get a result from the amplifier, and then you can put an EQ on it to finally, make final adjustments. So the NAM2 files, again, if you have a Fender twin reverb and you want a clean sound and a distorted sound and, etc., you have to have NAM2 files for each of these settings. You cannot have an NAM2 file, as far as I've seen so far, and say, okay, now I have all the controls of the amp, the input gain, master volume, you name it, and I'm going to tweak it. That's not possible. Just like in an impulse response, you cannot, for instance, change the microphone that it was recorded with. Okay? Now, I have worked a little bit with NAM2 files, and yes, they do sound really great. But as I said, there's a limitation to that because you have to use a huge number of NAM2 files if you want to simulate, let's say, the 6 basic sounds of 10 amplifiers. That'll cost you 60 NAM2 files. Compare that, for instance, to 60 impulse responses for all the microphones and the settings and the angles. So it's not there yet, but the main advantage of it is, and that is important. I'm in IT, I've been in IT for 45 years or something. What is important is that it's open source and it's a standard, which means that no more, oh, am I going to buy a fractal or am I going to buy a Helix? If they all support NAM2 files, that solves a problem. So I think the future is bright. I think NAM2 files will be used a lot, but I wouldn't sell my Helix yet because it doesn't support NAM2. Also, there are rumors spread also a little bit by the CEO of Line 6, I believe, that Line 6 has no direct plans to include NAM2 files in the Helix line, but it is on their list and in the back of their heads. And as he says, we don't announce things before we have them ready, which is admirable, to be honest. So I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now, all of a sudden, at least the Helix Stadium will be able to support NAM2 files. Okay, I hope this helps. Don't throw your Helix away yet. And if you program and you spend a lot of time programming it, it is a phenomenal instrument. And I call it an instrument because it basically is. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye.